What's up, everyone? Zavi D here of Organic Health Movement, bringing you today's edition of Deep Sea Dive with my brother Rob Carney. Rob Carney is the founder of Whole Health Connections. He makes beautiful podcasts, shares a lot of wisdom on Instagram and social media. We both study with the Czech Institute, and we met at our Holistic Lifestyle Coach Level 2 training. So as I said, Rob is a holistic lifestyle coach, a Reiki practitioner, a Thai body worker, holds a bachelor's degree in sustainable food and farming with a concentration on holistic health from UMass Amherst, and is currently enrolled at UMass Boston for his master's in business administration. Rob, welcome to the podcast.
Zavi D, thank you for having me, my man.
Oh, my pleasure, dude. I would love for our listeners to really get to know you and what inspired you to follow a journey of holistic health. And, what led up to us meeting at HLC2 and the different twists and turns of life that have brought you to this point.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, so we'll start when I was 17. I had my second concussion, which was, the first was from football when I was about 15. That took about 5 weeks for me to get back from. That was not a big deal. Second one at 17 really knocked me out for a good 5 months before I was back to performing. I was a state swimmer in high school, and it really took me some time to get back to that level where I was not getting dizzy doing flip turns, and I felt like I could actually hold my breath long enough to perform at optimal level. Actually, my coach, when I came back that season, she was like, "Did you start smoking like cigarettes?" She was like, "Because you're a lot worse." And I was like, "No, I had a concussion." Yeah, no. So basically, kind of started there, and for those 5 months where I couldn't really do much for physical activity, someone along the way recommended yoga, and this is back in 2011, where it was not very popular for men to do yoga. And I started going to these classes. I was usually the only guy there, if not maybe one other guy. Usually got some looks because, again, back then it was not commonplace for especially a young guy to be in a yoga class. But really fell in love with the practice. And as a very yang individual, I found that to really bring balance to my life. And along the way, I did that for a couple of years, and I was the first one to join the UNH Yoga Club as a guy. University of New Hampshire was where I went for my first 2 years of school. And we had a guest teacher come in every month, and one of those teachers was a lady from India who taught and studied meditation. She was a little old lady. She must have been 60s, 70s. And I remember she had this poster up, and she said, "This is what the soul looks like." And it was basically, actually have the poster somewhere around here, and it's basically like a red drawing, and it just gets lighter from red and goes red and then becomes a white in the center. And so we meditated looking at that poster, and she led us through a guided meditation. And at this time, this was a time that I was very interested in cannabis, and for me, it was like, oh my God, I'm getting high without smoking. This is the coolest thing ever. This is blowing my mind. And it helped ease a lot of those concussion symptoms, like the memory issues I had, the sensitivity to light, some of my headaches. And so it was just a whole paradigm shift that my brain can work in a way I had no idea it could without the use of any sort of substances. And so that was a bunch of light bulbs started going off at that point. I'd taken psychology in high school, and that kind of got me interested as well. And then at that point, I decided to start really focusing on neuroscience. So I took some neuroscience, psychology classes, nutrition classes, just wanting to learn more about this whole human system that we have going on. Because again, at that point, I was like, there's something else that we have not been taught and I have not learned. So I just started taking all the health classes I could relating to human health, nutrition, psychology. And somewhere along the lines, my sophomore year, I took what was called ecogastronomy, which is basically the study of the food and food systems, and learning about the devastation that is happening in our food systems. And so at that point, I knew I was originally in the Air Force ROTC my first semester at University of New Hampshire. I'd been an on-call firefighter in my hometown for about 3 years. And I've always known I wanted to help people, but just didn't know what the direction was. And then after doing this eco-gastronomy course, I was like, all right, our food system needs help. I don't know how to help it. I want to figure this out. So I
Mm.
ended up transferring to UMass Amherst and with a major of sustainable food and farming. And honestly, part of that was just because I didn't have the grades to get into any other schools. And I talked to the advisor. He seemed like a great guy. And I got admitted. And little did I know that that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because my first semester at UNH, when I had mono and I had bruised my spine and had a bunch of other injuries, in addition to the concussion, I was a mess for my first semester at college, and my grades suffered. Excuse me. Let me just give me 1 sec here. We'll cut this one out.
Dude, let it hang. Cough into the camera if you need to.
All right. So my grades had suffered, and I ended up getting admitted to the Stockbridge School of Agriculture at UMass Amherst. And that really just opened up the can of worms. And at that point, I was 20 years old, 21. I'm 26 now. And that's when I really started diving in. So I kind of dabbled in a lot of health stuff before, but it was then at UMass Amherst that things just unfolded in a way that I never could have imagined. So I started taking all these food systems courses, these anything about food, herbalism, mycology, study of mushrooms. I took some personal health and wellness classes, some what we called yoga for farmers, things like that, keeping your body fit with an active lifestyle. Um, and UMass Amherst has the #1 food in the country. So I was eating a lot of really good food, and they have a beautiful campus. They have an agricultural learning center, which some of our classes we would experiment. We raise chickens, free range chickens. We raise a bunch of different vegetables and crops and herbs and all that. We inoculated logs to grow mushrooms, and really just diving into this whole world of we really can grow our own food, where you go to a grocery store, you shop around, you put it in your cart, you have no idea where it comes from, you have no idea what is really in your foods. You have to have them on a cereal box, you can't pronounce half the ingredients. And so it just really opened my mind to noticing that there's a whole very important part of our education that we have neglected, and that is our health and our food. So I started working on some organic farms, one out in Sacramento, or like an hour or so east of Sacramento. And they were a basil farm, organic basil farm. They had sheep, chickens, and all that. So I lived out there for a few weeks my junior year of college during winter break. And then after I graduated, I traveled a bunch, went to San Diego with my family, went to Mexico to visit a friend, and then eventually went to Asia in early 2017. It was one of my best friends from my sustainable food and farming class. His name was Mithra. He is Sri Lankan, and his family lived in Sri Lanka still. So I went with him for a number of months and learned about their food systems there. And I was the only white guy, the only American, the only person with blue eyes, the only person 6 feet tall. I stood out like a sore thumb, and it was a very humbling experience, as most white males are never feeling like a minority in daily life here. And it really, people would stop and stare at me in the streets. They would point, they would gawk, they would ask my friend, why is he here? What is he? Like, they would ask any question you can imagine, because again, I was in a non-touristy part. We were working on his farm. So most of these people never seen an American, let alone a white guy before. So that really put my life into perspective and made me really appreciate how great things are for me here and back home, that these people were so accepting of me. They were so loving. We couldn't speak a common language, but we still communicated through actions and through just anything, like pointing at things, through giving gifts, through hugging, through just nonverbal communication, which was incredible. And then working at the school there with some of the kids, I was able to connect with a lot of kids, and we really taught each other our languages. So I would point at a stick. I would ask, how do you say that in their language? They'd say it. I'd say it in my language. And we just go around pointing at things and saying things in our language. At the end of the few months, we both had some fairly decent phrases that we could say. And it was a really cool way of almost being a child again, where I was pointing at things and having almost like a parental figure say, that's how you say this. But it was a child teaching me. And so we were teaching each other. And so after I got back from Asia, I went to Thailand after that, did a meditation retreat for a while, traveled around, went to Malaysia, Philippines as well. Then coming back, it was kind of a tough transition after being gone for about 4.5 months, 4.5 months. And I remember distinctly when I landed in JFK airport, just hearing English again as the primary language, which I hadn't heard in months. Usually it was all these different languages in Asia. And the one thing I noticed was everyone was complaining. Everyone's at the airport is just complaining and bickering, and it's all the most minuscule details, like, oh, my plane was 15 minutes late. It's like all these things that I was like, you people have no idea what other people are dealing with the other side of the world, that these people are struggling to put food on the table, and we're complaining about our airplane being 15 minutes late. So again, another perspective shift for me that just made me really grateful for the life I do have. And along this way, I taught some introduction to meditation classes and some basic nutrition classes to kids. I worked at some schools. Um, and then I stumbled upon, well, back in 2012, I started following Elliot Hulse, and he was a big impact on my life. I never met him in person, but I started studying his work. And he'd always talked about this Paul Chek guy, this Paul Chek guy, this Paul Chek guy. And eventually I was like, all right, I got to check out this Paul Chek guy, because now that I've heard Elliot say it a million times and he's a mentor of mine, I got to learn from his mentor. So eventually I started reading Paul's How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy book. I started watching his YouTube videos. And I noticed Elliot had much more of attention grabbing videos, Paul's material was very powerful. And I couldn't deny that. I got drawn in. So I started studying Paul some more. I stumbled upon Troy Casey, certified health nut, and started just studying all these people, reading more books, listening to podcasts. And over the course of the past 9 or so years from that concussion, it's just really just been a self-discovery journey, a self-healing journey, and just always trying to learn more about myself and then share that information with anyone who's willing to listen or anyone who's looking to make a change. And so in 2018, I decided it was time to get things rocking and rolling. I lived in Los Angeles for about 10 months. I was working in the medical device industry from January 2018 until September. And I was with a small startup company, and it didn't quite start up. So I moved back to my home in Boston with my family with about $10,000 in credit card debt from trying to get going with that startup company. I really gave it my all and really bet on it, and it should have worked out, but there was just some internal drama within the company that was really out of my control within the upper management. There's only 11 of us in the company, but it was, I mean, that plague can spread pretty quickly. So at that point, when I returned, I decided, and this is something I'd known for a while and was just too fearful to implement, was that I need to start my own business. I need to be completely in control of my own destiny. I need to be helping people the way that I have the gifts to, and not trying to do it in a way that is, again, like through the medical device industry, I was doing pretty well at the sales and marketing, and I was enjoying talking to all these top level doctors and all these specialists, but it was closer than what I'd done before, but it wasn't exactly what I feel called to do. So in 2018, September now, I started my Whole Health Connections business, which at the time was a referral company, as I've worked with a lot of nutritionists, acupuncturists, massage therapists, hypnotherapists in the area since my concussion when I was 17. So I've really known a lot of the best in the south of Boston, the South Shore area of Boston. And so people would always ask me, like, oh, where should I go for this? Where should I go for that? And eventually I just said, you know what, I'm going to make a business out of it. So it started there. But very quickly after a few months, I realized this is not a very scalable business model. This is not a very time efficient model. This is not as fulfilling as I'd hoped it to be. And that's where I then I decided, all right, I'm going to learn Reiki. I've had Reiki done to me. And I decided, all right, I'm going to become a practitioner so I can heal myself and I can help other people in that way. And around that same time, I took the Holistic Lifestyle Coaching Level 1 online through the Czech Institute. And then about 6 months later, or a few months later, I took the level 2 Reiki. And then I came back and did the level 2 in San Diego, California back in April, where we met. And that was a life-changing week, to say the least. A lot of my limiting beliefs were exposed of what I thought I could or could not do. A lot of the hesitations I had around what I was capable of, or what I perceived as my lack of knowledge, were quickly diminished from that week in the training with the HLC2 group. And it really just showed me I'm in the right place. This is where I belong. This is where I can really make an impact, is by coaching people. And I still love doing classes and live events. I love speaking at events. But the coaching and the connecting is really where I get the most fulfillment, is seeing those aha moments in people, seeing those thank yous, those I didn't know I could do this moments within people. And so essentially what it really came down to was I need to be able to help people at the best level I can. And so I partnered up with a few nutrition organic superfood companies, one being my friend Alex Dorr. He's from Western Mass. So we actually had some class together. We took mycology together. And so he has Mushroom Revival. They're a bunch of organic superfood mushrooms. And I've seen great benefits with that because a lot of people can't afford coaching. And I found that sometimes all they need is a little something to take the edge off, or the people that are already very healthy, but they just need that little extra boost, and they don't need a whole coaching package, but they just need a little nutritional bonus to kind of bring them to the next level. And so I partnered with them, and then a group called Purium, and they have a bunch of superfoods as well. So I've really found that between the coaching and the superfoods, it's a pretty good dynamic duo to help people improve their overall health, happiness, reduce stress. And right now I'm just focused on helping people reduce their stress, improve their sleep, and increase their energy. And because I feel like those are areas in my life that I have quite a bit of knowledge and experience with, especially after the concussion, where my sleep was all off and my stress levels were through the roof and my energy was low. So I've really done a lot of deep work in that area. So that's really where I'm focused on now, is helping people reduce stress, improve sleep, increase energy to live a happier, healthier, more sustainable life.
Fucking brilliant, man. I love all of that. Rob, I think you speak not only as an embodied practitioner, but you've been through the ringer of what it means to not only be injured, but to deal with frustrating musculoskeletal problems. You've studied extensively, you've explored the world, you've brought in wisdom from multiple disciplines, which is something that I talked about on the last podcast, something very, very important to creating a well-rounded practitioner. I think our tendency, and I notice in a lot of people, whether it's a doctrine, a way of spirituality, a style of yoga, really anything, pick any aspect of society, we get really addicted to one way of seeing things and one way of being, because our tribal identity is so associated with feeling valuable based on the values of one system. To me, a well-rounded practitioner, you as an example, pulls from all these different avenues and puts that together into a synthesized package that maintains authenticity and also offers the world something that's unique. I think right now the world is in need of a lot of healing. And, you know, in your study of sustainable food and farming, I'm curious to hear what stood out to you in terms of what's happening with the ecosystems of the world and what can we do to serve and help them?
Yeah, it's a great question, and a very timely question with the way that things are going. And I really think it all just begins with what we eat. We vote with our dollar. So by buying organic foods, you are supporting an organic ecosystem. And I think that we tend to overlook that. We think that we're too small to make a change. But the matter of fact is, if you're buying organic, local foods from, let's say, your local farmer's market, that is extremely different than buying the pesticide covered crops that you would buy, let's say, on your Cheerios or any sort of commercial product. And at the end of the day, our soil health is being depleted when we monocrop things. And monocrop meaning you're growing one crop in the same area over and over and over again. So each crop needs different nutrients. So if you're growing wheat in the same fields, you're depleting the soil of what that wheat needs. So after 3, 5, 10 years, it's no wonder we need all these GMO foods. We need all these pesticides because they're not hardy anymore. There's no nutrition in the soil for them to draw from. And so by supporting organic farms, which typically do very much better crop rotation. So let's say you grow tomatoes here one year, and now in that same plot the next year you're doing corn, and the next you're doing lettuce, and you alternate it so that the different nutrients have time to replenish. That is a much more sustainable approach. And at the end of the day, it doesn't take that much more effort if you're a small farm because you're planting anyway. And yeah, you just you can change where you plant them. And a lot of times in a permaculture system, which is basically you put a lot of effort up front to really make a sustainable ecosystem within your environment, it can be a self-sustaining system. And obviously it depends where you live. In places like New England, we have winters that can be a bit more challenging as crops are going to die. But in many systems, let's say, for example, you put trees that need less water on the top of the hill, and you have a hill at the bottom where for the crops that need more water. So when it rains, the water will go down naturally. You don't have to worry about spending all the resources to water them with a hose or whatever it may be. So by setting it up in a small farm, you have more options to really create a sustainable system. And on the other side, we have the bee population. And bees obviously are being decimated by these pesticides that are not found on organic farms. So by spraying these pesticides that are killing our bees, and for an example, I have a cranberry bogs right down the street from my parents' house where I'm staying for the weekend. And growing up, I remember there was like a little pond and there would be a bunch of tadpoles and frogs. And once or twice a year, the helicopters come out, they spray all the crops. You go the next day, there are hundreds of frogs and tadpoles dead floating to the top. And so I realized from a very early age, because I used to love to catch the tadpoles. And at one point, me and my friends, actually, we would catch the tadpoles at a huge glass tank. I'd catch them before I knew they were going to spray, raise them in my basement. When they're frogs, I'd release them back to the pond. So we were trying to save the frogs that way. And that was a very naive approach. We didn't really understand the full extent of what was happening, but we kind of recognized these patterns of they're going to die if we don't take them now. So we need to take them now. Mm. And my point with that is with the bees, we need to save them now. And to do that, when they fertilize and pollinate, up to 75% of our foods that we eat, it's not like an ecosystem, it's a human issue too. We cannot survive without the bees. If the bees go, we're going to be soon thereafter. And it's going to start with the people that have the least access to food. So what we need to do is really support our local organic farmers. And if you can't do local, let's say you live in a place where there are no farmers markets, still buy organic. That's going to make a substantial difference because it's not spraying these pesticides that are destroying the crops and the bugs, which are actually quite beneficial most of the time because they're pollinators as well, and they're not killing the bees, and they're not harming the soil, not killing the fungus with fungicides, which actually really help the plants grow together, because typically most mushroom have mycelium, which is their equivalent of roots. And the mycelium and roots tend to work together and intertwine, and they can exchange nutrition because the fungus and the roots actually need different nutrients most of the time. So it's almost like a trade. It's like, here, I'll give you this phosphorus, you give me this nitrogen type of thing. So they can actually interchange each other. So when we're killing the fungus, we're actually harming our own plants, even though we think that all fungus are bad and they're destroying our plants. Most of the time, they're very beneficial. So the long answer to your question is that we need to focus on buying organic food and supporting organizations, whether that be businesses, small local farmers, whatever the case may be. We need to be supporting those who are stewards of the earth rather than destroying the soil and destroying the creatures that support it.
Very well said. Or I think a lot of people looking at organic farming tend to think it's a bunch of hippies with, really long armpit hair just getting together and, using cow manure to.
Which a lot of it is.
Which a lot of it is. But the value, I think, of what you pointed out for people who are hesitant to buy organic food or struggling, maybe on the edge, think it's stupid or don't see the value in it. As you said, the ecosystems are in desperate need of solution, in desperate need of love, and desperate need of care. And people who stand on the side and continue to eat, live, breathe, think, move in a way that's counterproductive to the overall well-being of the planet don't seem to see that it's all one closed loop. It's all part of one process. And the inner emotional doubt, pessimism, anger, disconnect from nature that creates this process where we spray ponds with a bunch of pesticides, or perhaps we're spraying crops and the ponds get um, maladapted to that pesticide presence too. All of that is creating kind of a negative feedback loop where we're sicker than we've ever been before. The soil, for lack of a better term, is fucked. Uh, Water is a serious issue. And like you said, traveling in Thailand, people in the Western world don't understand the difficulties and the immense process that procuring water, that finding clean, fresh food is for most of the people on this planet. And so really, Rob, and when I look at this, I see it as a matter of disconnect from our heart, because any good-hearted person will say, yeah, the earth feeds me, let me do something to help the earth. There's a symbiosis there. And I think we've been conditioned, programmed to believe that the way we lead life as it is now is just, oh, well, destruction of the environment is a natural byproduct of the way we live. And so to that point, you know, after the beautiful things that you shared about the bees and really making sure that we're so loving that we will catch those tadpoles and we will raise them with perhaps a peace sign and a middle finger to the man. I'm wondering, you know, how do you go about creating the priority and value system in your life of buying organic food, of nourishing your body with what it needs, and of living in a way that's harmonious with the earth?
Hmm. Yeah, well, first I want to go back to my hippie comment. Hippies are some of the most incredibly down-to-earth, literally, people that I've ever met. They're generally very loving, caring people, and I've had the opportunity to really work with a lot of them in my farming, because a lot of the sustainable food and farming major was a lot of hippies, and you really notice, like, yeah, a lot of people are like, oh, those are the weirdos, but they're some of the most kind people I've ever met, and the most giving people. They come into class giving us their organic veggies, like, hey, like, I grew this, and like, holy shit, like, you were one of the nicest people ever. So just want to make sure I cover that point, that I love the hippie community. I love the majority of what they do, and the people I've met along my journey that would classify themselves as that. But to answer your question, the way I justify buying organic food, which the biggest objection I get is it's too expensive. Too much. How much does being ill cost you? How much is the cost of illness versus the cost of wellness? And yes, in the short term, the cost of wellness is going to be more, because you can just buy McDonald's for $1 cheeseburger or get a grass-fed patty for $4 at the grocery store. But let's say now you're 60 years old and you have all these illnesses, and you have diabetes, cancer, obesity, whatever the case may be, all three. How much is that going to cost you now? Probably a lot more than had you just bought some organic food for the past few years. So the way I see it is, we are one organism. We're all interconnected. Every single action we take is a ripple effect that projects outwards in every single direction, affecting everything from our thoughts. You walk into an elevator, you can tell right away if someone is in a bad mood. You feel their energy. It's like, holy shit, I'm going to stay away from that guy. I'm going to go the opposite corner. Just like you can tell when someone's happy. They're smiling, their energy, they're walking around with a different swagger. So every action and thought we take affects everything and everyone around us. So with that being said, when I'm buying this organic food and I look at the price tag of the non-organic variety directly next to it oftentimes, and I see the $3 difference for an organic cucumber of $4 versus 99 cents for a conventionally grown. But I take that moment to pause and remind myself, this isn't just for me. This is for the entire planet. And sometimes I'm biting my tongue as I'm putting that in my grocery cart, knowing how much more expensive it can be. But at the same time, the price of organic has come down substantially because it's becoming more popular and because more people are purchasing it and growing it because we're realizing that it's needed. And so, as I said earlier, we vote with our dollar. And so the more we buy organic food, it's going to be supply and demand. So the price is going to come down because we're going to be buying more. It can be produced more easily. It's going to be replacing the conventionally grown. So in only in a short amount of time, I've noticed substantially different prices. Like you go to Whole Foods now, there's a lot of organic food that's cheaper than if you go to Stop and Shop for a conventionally grown. So the prices are changing, and a lot of times you go to farmers markets or get a farm share, which basically you can set up however, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, you get a shipment of fresh veggies either delivered to you or for pickup, however the individual farm does it. But there are very um, cost-effective ways to do it. And again, with some of these superfoods, you can buy a whole tub of green juice for less than $3 a day, or you can try to juice it yourself and probably not get an organic juice if you go to a store, and it'll cost you $10. So you can get an organic green juice that is in a freeze-dried powder for $3 a day, or you can go to a store like a Jamba Juice or some other place that claims to be healthy, or a Panera Bread or Dunkin' Donuts or whatever that says they have their juices, which is really just conventionally grown bullshit most of the time. So people, I think they tend to want the quick fix, and they want the illusion that they're being healthy. Like I know there's so many people that go out and party all weekend, and I was one of these people, so I can talk from experience. And then you get a green juice on Sunday as you're covering, oh, now I'm healthy again. But it really does come down to you gotta find that balance, and you gotta really look to make it a regular decision. And with that, every decision takes some time and effort to really become less conscious and less effort expending, where a lot of times now I literally don't even see the conventional food. Like if I walk down an aisle and I have my organic food in mind, I just completely tune out everything else. It's not even an option for me anymore. I don't deem most of those as something I'd even buy because I don't want to support that. I don't want to spend my money and vote with my dollar to support that. And so again, I just look at the cost of wellness versus the cost of illness, and how can I do my job of sharing wellness and sharing a holistic lifestyle if I'm not embodying it. And the way I see it is, I look at someone like Troy Casey, who's like 53 years old or early 50s. He is in better shape than myself, first of all, but he's in better shape than most people of any age. And just seeing that he's been juicing, doing all these holistic lifestyle factors for the past 30 years, and you can see the difference. I'm like Paul Chek. You see the difference of what a long-term approach to health looks like compared to the average American of their age who is overweight, obese, diabetes, just sickly looking. And so I see these leaders, these teachers who have embodied what they preach and what they teach and what they do. And again, I want to be a living example of everything that I share. And I want to be a leader not only by what I say, but what I do. And I think there's a lot of talking heads out there that will talk about what we need to do, what you need to do, what the best thing for you is. But do they do that themselves is the question. And that's where I think it really just comes down to, we need to do little things like buying organic food and supporting our local farmers, and recognizing that we are all connected, and every action we take affects everyone around us and people on the other side of the world. Because if we're not buying these factory raised packaged foods from China or India, and we're taking that out of their hands and we're supporting our local farmers, now maybe these people in Asia who are 14 years old working on farms exposed to chemicals, now maybe they'll be working on organic farms because that's where the market has shifted. So the long answer to your question here is that it starts with how can we make a change immediately and improve our health and improve the planet health. And I think that starts with buying organic food.
Love it. Clearly explained. Beautiful explanation. I kind of postulate that a lot of the decisions around buying conventionally grown food, drinking excess alcohol, drug addiction, essentially the destructive habits that we see so prevalently in Western society come from this deep feeling of insignificance and unworthiness. I think if you understand your significance in the world and how powerful each and every action that you make is, how it affects the global whole, how you are a part of that and you are valuable, your decisions start to be elevated to a higher frequency of choice. And when the belief systems, the value systems, as you spoke about, behind your choices, really understanding that the efficiency of living in a healthy, symbiotic way far outweighs the quote unquote industrial efficiency of monocropping and spraying ass tons of pesticides into the soil and going to Jamba Juice and having what you think is a healthy smoothie, and then really it's just a 16-ounce little small bucket of sugar. The value system of saying, oh shit, I matter in the world and what I'm going to do is going to benefit myself and others, and by living in harmony with my values, like you said, by being embodied, I create this ripple effect of love and compassion in the world where I'm caring for the earth is caring for me. And as I learn to really address the unworthiness, the insignificance that we're conditioned into, I can make my life this beautiful, wondrous, mystery of ever folding on expansion rather than this depressing downward spiral of ill health.
Mm.
My next kind of a point that I wanted to talk to you about has to do with your business as it is now. As a coach, as a practitioner, as a body worker, I'm sure that you interact with a host of different, perhaps chronic illnesses or health conditions. And my question is, what is the first thing you address with clients when they come to you with a chief complaint of, maybe musculoskeletal pain or a digestive issue or brain fog? What is it that you do in your practice to help people, become the best version of themselves?
Mm. Yeah, I think that really two parts. I think the first is breathing. How are they breathing?
Mm.
We can get into a whole another podcast on the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, but essentially the long and the short of it is, if you're breathing shallowly into your chest through your mouth, you're activating the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight, which is stimulating the production of cortisol, adrenaline, cortisol being the primary stress hormone, and adrenaline. Most of us know what adrenaline does. These two hormones help us fight or flight. And these can be extremely powerful. They are the part, if not the reason why we have survived this far in humanity. But in modern society, we're not running from a bear or fighting another animal, fighting another opponent in hand-to-hand combat. And so these chronic stresses, our body tends not to be able to distinguish from, oh, I just got an angry email, that guy just flipped me off, I'm in traffic. We still feel that stress and it's a threat to our system. So we activate these hormones. And when we're never able to turn them off, we run into a lot of issues like obesity, inflammation, anxiety, stress, depression, whatever the list goes on. But a lot of it stems from our breathing. So whenever I'm doing a class or leading a meditation, we always begin with the breath and reminding people to breathe into the belly, 2/3 the belly, 1/3 the chest. So we're and through the nose. So when we're doing that, I'd like to say, if you can't do anything else, or you take nothing away from my talk, do 3 deep belly breaths before every time you eat. Because every time that we're eating, if we're not in the parasympathetic mode, we're in the fight or flight mode, we're not going to be digesting things. Because in our sympathetic nervous system, when that's activated, everything else is shut off. Our digestion is shut off. Our breathing is stifled, and it's tending to be shallow through the chest, so we can get quick breaths if we're running. And things like sex, our sex drive is turned off, and we wonder why we need Viagra more than ever, is because we're stuck in our sympathetic nervous system. And so by just simply changing our breathing, we can absolutely change everything else. And the second part to that is why? Why are you doing this? Why do you want to change? What's your goal? What's your objective? Is it because you want to be able to play with your kids without having back pain? Is it because you want to run a marathon? What's your objective? Do you want to be the best health coach? What do you want to be? What do you want to do? And most people don't know, because we're kind of aimlessly flopping around without any real direction. So giving some sort of direction, I can say from experiences, fundamentally changed how I think, how I act, and how I just go about my life with every single action. So again, when it comes back to buying the organic food, it's in line with my vision, it's in line with my mission. So it's a no-brainer. As I said, I don't see the conventional food as an option. And obviously I'm not perfect. Occasionally I'll go to Five Guys and grab a burger every once in a while because, once a month it's not going to kill me. And sometimes it's enjoyable because I want to do that with a friend or friends or whatever. But 90% of the time, if not more, I'm focused on what is in line with my mission. And so by finding that purpose and that direction, it gives the why. Because without a why, there's really no power behind anything that I'm going to share with them. Because I can tell them to go to bed by 10:30, to drink lots of water when they wake up, and to eat organic food and do some breath work and some yoga and move, go for a walk. But if they're just doing it for who knows what reason, it's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to last. So by starting with the breathing, it gets them out of that stress response, and then finding their why. And that's why I've really kind of come down to focusing on reducing stress, improving sleep, and increasing energy, because it's a feedback loop, and it's a triangle, it's a circle, it all feeds into each other. So if you have high stress, you're probably not sleeping very well. And usually that's when you just pass out at night because you're so tired and exhausted, not even tired, exhausted from stressing all day. And you wake up with low energy because you didn't sleep well. And then you get stressed because you're overtired, you don't have enough energy. So it's just this vicious cycle, or it can be a very powerful cycle. So by focusing on the stress first, we focus on that, we get that cleared up, starting with breathing, starting with meditation, things, going for a walk. Um, Really the 6 foundation principles: moving, thinking, breathing, nutrition, hydration, sleep. And then with the sleep, that tends to be improved when the stress is reduced. And then we move towards the energy, and the energy tends to be a lot better once we're sleeping. And so we're not going to be focusing on exercising, doing vigorous exercises, if they're in a place of being sleep deprived or overstressed, because their system is already too yang. It's already got too much excess going on, too much inflammation. So we're going to focus on restoring and replenishing first. And then once we have the energy, then we can add things back in like exercise. So it really is a healing journey to start, I'd say, is the most basic way, is healing and replenishing the battery that most of us drain on a regular basis without recharging fully. And then once we're there, then we take it from there and really start to dive in what's going to make fundamental changes.
And right on, Rob. I feel like the way in which we coach clients to get those simple 3 key steps in place in their life so that they can really live an empowered and fulfilling lifestyle, such that they're not depleted, they're not drained all the time, they have the energy to participate in their dream and their direction. I think it's really key. And a lot of people don't understand the value of making those small little changes that can make a huge difference in the long run. So if they have one less drink per week, for example, or if they get one green juice in the morning and they just go to bed 1 hour earlier than they're used to, that has an accumulation effect. Uh, Perhaps you experience this, but I think a lot of people that I've coached, they come to me and they're like, well, life just happens. And, these complaints that I'm bringing to you are surrounding an issue that just kind of came out of nowhere. But I don't really think any of this comes out of nowhere, because like a small little change can make a big positive difference, the small little things that we do to ourselves every day from a detrimental perspective can in the end have a really, really big impact. So like you said, people who drive to Chick-fil-A every day for lunch because it's easy, one day of Chick-fil-A 365 days a year is a really, really quick, is like the high speed lane to obesity,
Mm-hmm.
hypertension, high blood pressure, so forth and so on. So I think that as coaches, if we can get people to make small little changes in their life, we can have a huge, huge impact on their sense of vitality, their well-being, the sense of love that they have for themselves, because the healthier we are, the more energized we are, the more energized we are, the more we can feel love within ourselves and give it. In your practice, I'm wondering, as you coach people to get better sleep, to really focus on, that breathing mechanics and finding a proper rhythm within their body. What is kind of the number one thing that you see in people that could be easily corrected with, the 6 foundation principles?
Yeah, and I really like what you just said about the little things every day. So there's a quote that I wish I could remember who said it, but it's little by little, a little becomes a lot.
Mm.
And so as we're doing these little things, as you said, it could be good for us or it could be bad for us. And as I said earlier, with someone like Troy Casey, who's doing something every single day for 30 years, that shows compared to his peers. Someone like Paul Chek, it shows because they've been doing the little things every single day. And so what it really does come down to is, for the most part, is people aren't moving enough.
Mm.
And life itself is a form of movement. Our brain is constantly moving with our neural connections. Our digestive system is moving. Our heart is constantly moving with blood pumping. And so by not moving enough, we're not giving our body the necessary conditions to succeed. And so if I say there's one thing anyone can do that would change their life, go for a 20-minute walk every morning. I've actually started implementing that myself, which is really freaking hard. Now it's 20 degrees out at 7:30 in the morning in New England, but I bundle up, and again, I'm trying to practice what I preach, that if I'm going to be telling people to go for a walk in New England at 20 degrees at between 6:30 and 7:30 in the morning, I need to be able to do that myself.
Right.
And granted, the beard helps. The beard keeps my face very warm. I will not say that's not true. But again, I'll do some Wim Hof breathing before. I'll really fuel my body with oxygen to prepare it. And again, I'll just bundle up as much as I need to, because again, for 15, 20 minutes of walking, you're moving, you're pumping blood. You're not going to catch frostbite unless you're exposing yourself. And well, if someone doesn't catch frostbite, I didn't tell you to do that. But but point being, bundle up, just make it happen. There's so many excuses we can make for why we can't move or go to the gym or whatever. And I get that. Yeah, you're busy. Maybe you have 6 kids and you work a job 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day to feed your family, whatever. So you don't have time to go to the gym for an hour. You don't have time to drive to the gym and then go to the gym for an hour. So right outside your house, go for a walk, 15 minutes, find a loop, start off your day that way. And that's a pretty easy fix. And the way that I like to describe it is that typically we can control our mornings and our evenings. So during the day, let's just call it chaos. We have no idea what's going to happen. We're at work. We could get stuck in traffic. It's pretty much unpredictable for most people in the modern life. But in the mornings and evenings, you have complete control. You can wake up 15 minutes earlier to go for your walk. Or at night, if you're trying to do a meditation, you meditate 15 minutes instead of watching the TV. At the end of the day and the beginning of the day, that's where our free time is. And if we make a routine out of that, make a habit out of that, all of a sudden it becomes a no thought. And again, now I wake up out of bed and it's not like, oh, fuck, I have to go outside in the cold and walk. I get up and I do it because I know it makes me feel better. And again, it's more challenging in the winter. Now that's actually like that because now it's more of a mental game too. It's not just a physical game of getting out of bed and getting up and moving. Now it's like, all right, I need to mentally prepare myself and do some breath work before I go out and face the cold. And so I'd say the first thing is just walking. And the second thing I'd say in terms of a tangible practice is doing some cold showers. And again, that's a suggestion that people don't like in the winter of New England because it's not appealing to be cold outside and go inside and take a cold shower. But honestly, at this point where I've been doing it every day for consistently now, where I used to kind of go back and forth, now it's been a good 4 months of every single day I take a cold shower. It doesn't even really faze me anymore, even though it's really cold outside. And yes, sometimes the heat is good for my body. I'll give a hot shower, but I always at least start and end with cold. So I'll initiate with cold and finish with cold. And there's a lot of benefits to that between not drying out your skin from the hot showers, especially in the winter where we have the heat on and all that. So I'd say if people are going to start with anything, start with some breathing, focusing on your breathing at home just once a day at least, if not more the merrier. But just breathe for 5 minutes a day, go for a 15-minute walk, and take a cold shower.
Love it. So simple too. Something that can be easily added to any daily routine.
And it's free.
That was the very first thing that I wanted to mention when you were talking about your meditation class is people are so concerned. Oh my God, I don't know how much organic food is going to cost, and it might be more expensive. And man, all those supplements sound expensive. And it's just way easier just to do what I've been doing because it's cheaper. And then I can have more money for bullshit that I don't need. I think when you look at it, the things that are most effective, healthiest for us are the cheapest and things we already do. Uh, I've been thinking about this lately. I think, a lot of who we are and who we desire to be in the world, we already are. And the game we play with ourselves is, oh, it's going to be too difficult, or oh, I'm going to have to give up too much to be that, or, if I take a cold shower every day, I don't get to enjoy the hot one. And, in the end, none of that is really true. What's true is we are all doing what we need to do each and every day to become better, whether or not we believe it or not. And that includes the stuff that makes us ill, unhealthy, and
Mm.
diseased. Because when we do those things that, allow us to look in the mirror and go, oh shit, this is not good, we have the opportunity to grow. And if we hear that clarion call, we can make a big difference in our life, in a meaningful and empowered way. And like you said, the cheapest way to heal your body is to breathe, which you already do, drink water, which we already do. It's just, when you combine all those 6 foundation principles, I won't go into them because we said them a few times, but you just need to amplify the effect of those things in your life rather than trying to redo everything. Just calm down, take a deep breath, and see that everything that you need to be doing, you're already doing to some degree.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it is interesting too, as you said, is a lot of the um, fear. I'd say it is a fear of change that people don't want to try these things because they're fearful of what they're going to be missing or what they're giving up, or what if it doesn't work out, or whatever excuses we make up in our heads. And it's just interesting to me that most of the people won't even try. And so to me, a cold shower is not going to kill you. Trying some breath work is not going to kill you. Getting some more sleep is not going to kill you. Going for a walk is not going to kill you. But what if it helps you? What about that side of the coin? I think we're very conditioned to look at the negative, but what if it helps? Instead of looking at the downside, what if it helps? What if it changes your life? And again, this is an extreme example, but let's say you go for a walk and you meet someone, you meet the love of your life because you went for that walk. You meet your next business partner, or you find $20 on the ground. There's amazing ways that the universe works to tell us that we're doing the right thing. And it's always interesting to me that whenever I feel resistance towards something, I try to remind myself what could happen in terms of the positive. And obviously, there's times that you need to look at the real potential harm of an action you're doing. But for the most part, we're too conditioned on the negative that we just got to shift our mindset. And I think a lot of that comes to exposing ourselves to positive influences and really not watching things like the biased news stations or things that just stream bad news stories that make us sad and depressed and just show the negative sides of things, or things that people in the politics or they're just attacking each other. And there's so many different ways to fill your brain rather than with negativity, especially in the digital age where we literally have YouTube, which has probably billions of videos, at least billions of hours of videos on there. And you can really choose who you want to watch, who you want to listen to. And granted, that can be good or bad because you might get a biased view and you might be buying into something that's not completely true. But at the end of the day, I think we just need a little bit of, not a little bit, we need a big mindset shift as a collective society. And so part of what I want to do is just spread that positivity and spread that awareness that, look, there is another way. This isn't the only thing that we have to do. This isn't what the parameters that we've been placed in is typically you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, you get a job, you retire when you're 60, 65, depending on what your payment plan looks like. And then you live, then you travel. But then anything outside of that is deemed crazy or wrong. And obviously the past few years as social media has really taken off, it's really kind of changed that perspective that now there's a lot of different ways to live that are becoming acceptable. But traditionally that was the way it was. And I think that we need to be more open-minded about trying new things that could be beneficial to our body, that are free, that could change our life in 5 minutes a day, whether that's a meditation, breath work, cold shower, walk, whatever, stretching. And I just think it doesn't need to be that difficult, but we tend to make it that difficult because as we just said, we have these limiting beliefs and we have these what ifs, we have these thoughts of I'm missing out on this. And what I say to that is, look, you can still take your warm showers. I'm not telling you not to. I'm just saying add some cold. You can do both. You can have cold in the beginning, do warm in the middle, and end with cold. You can do both. You can still take your warm baths, maybe throw an ice bath in there too. Hey, you can do both. You can still watch your TV, just do 15 minutes less so you can go for your walk or do a meditation. You can still live your life. You don't have to completely upheave everything and flip the table over and change everything, because it's not a sustainable approach for most people. Most people do better with slowly implementing these practices, but again, it doesn't need to be completely complicated. Just keep it simple and do it every day.
Beautifully said, man. The simplicity factor of it is almost deceiving to a certain degree. We overcomplicate our emotional turmoil, our physical turmoil, mental turmoil, and the simplicity of the solution can often be, I think, blinding to most people. And I think when we do find the solution, there are a lot of aspects of guilt and shame and fear that we build up around these habits that really are detrimental to our health, um, because we can use those as a justification for the instant gratification of a sugar high, or a glass of vodka or whatever it is. And I think the value of being embodied, and like you said, making simple choices in favor of your health, is that in the long run, it just gives you the opportunity to find balance in your life, rather than trying to be dogmatic and be perfect and take these changes and make them the only thing you can do, and you can never go to Five Guys again. It's really, holism includes the whole picture. Holistic does not mean, oh, we are only going to hang out with hippies and eat organic food, and by the way, everyone who doesn't is a piece of shit and we don't like them. That's not it at all. It's love and compassion for where everyone is at, with a common goal of well-being and unity for all.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it's something that I think that I've really found that really helps me is these are the three things that I've reminded myself of since I started my business, is that any change we want to make, whether it's a lifestyle change, whether it's growing a business or improving our health, it's going to take patience, persistence, and consistency. And since I started my business, I wish I remember how I came up with those three words, but I did some meditating and some journaling and just found that those three really kind of summed up what I needed to do in that moment. And then it turned out those three things were what I need to do in most moments when I had a goal in mind or something I want to change. So we need to be patient, because anything we implement is not going to have instantaneous effects in an instant gratification world that we live in with social media and so many quick fixes with you pop a pill, you feel better. Anything that is long-term and sustainable is going to take some patience, and it's going to take some persistence, because you're probably going to suck at it at first. Whether you're trying to run your marathon, you've never run a mile. Yeah, you're going to be pretty bad at first, but if your goal is to run a marathon and you're persistent with it, you're probably going to get better, and you're going to be able to do it if that's your goal, and you're just consistent with it as well. And I think that's the piece that many of us tend to leave out, is that consistency factor. And everything we do, as we talked about a number of times now, is everything compounds. So when we're doing things over and over, we have these neural pathways in our brain, which I like to think of them as roads. So the first time you do it, you're hacking through a freaking forest with a hatchet, trying to pave a new way. And then eventually there's just some stumps. You dig out the stumps, and now it's easy. Now it's a dirt road, and now something gets paved, and now it's a super highway. That every time you're doing this, you've done this now for 5 years straight or a year straight or whatever it is. Now you have this mega highway where that action is just seamless. It goes easily because you've done it so many times. And so I think that just reminding ourselves to be patient, to be persistent, and to be consistent toward anything we're working for is really just the basis. It's the basis of achieving any goal. And so that is something I try to share with anyone who's having troubles, whether it's relationship issues, they just broke up, they're feeling miserable. It's like, look, it's going to take some time. You need to be patient. You need to be persistent to work through this. You need to be consistent to do this every damn day. Or in the case of exercise, let's say your plan is to work out 5 times a week. So you got to do it 5 times a week and be consistent with that. So I've really found those 3 words have really resonated with me and have been very helpful with my own growth and my own just reminders of what I need to do on a regular basis to get to where I want to go.
Consistency is key, as you said. And the theme of this conversation has been, remind me of the quote again, but little accumulation creates big change.
Yeah, little by little, a little becomes a lot.
Little by little, a little becomes a lot. That reminds me of a gua within the I Ching called little accumulation, with the same exact message. And I drew that when I asked the book, what does my, the future of my business life look like? And really, it shared little accumulation. Small little changes and small little victories add up over time. And when somebody goes, let's just say, in the context of this health conversation, somebody goes to McDonald's one day. Rather than seeing that as failure, we can see that also as temporary defeat. It's a small loss. Over time, it's certainly not good for you. But we're all allowed to make mistakes, and we're all allowed to, once in a while go, oh, shit, today is not my day, but tomorrow will be, or 2 hours from now will be. And like you said, consistency and staying driven with that one love, that dream that you have for life, is essential to creating love within your soul, love within your spirit, something that you can give to all, and something that you can also, metaphorically put a flag in and claim your own territory of wellness and empowerment.
Yeah, and on that too, I want to touch on the topic of forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we don't forgive ourselves enough. I think that, or I see that many people can be very forgiving to others. I mean, oftentimes they're not forgiving to others either, but for the most part, we are more forgiving to others than we are to ourselves. And I think that is a huge disservice to not only ourselves, but the people that we're forgiving, because we're just burying our own baggage, and we can't really be our true authentic selves when we're interacting with people, especially in the case of intimate relationships. If we have all these shadows and these demons in our closet, those tend to be exposed very quickly when you start to get close with someone, because you're spending a lot of time with them, you're opening up to them. And I've found recently that as I've been spending more time with this one girl that I've been fortunate to spend a lot of time with the past few months, is there's been a lot of shadows that have come out that I've been like, holy shit, I kind of forgot about that bad boy. Kind of forgot that was never really fully taken care of. And it's always interesting that a lot of that just came from the fact that I didn't forgive myself. And I'd moved on and I accepted like that's kind of what it was, but I never really forgave myself. And so, yeah, I just want to remind everyone listening is that, as you said, it's okay to make a mistake. Don't beat yourself up. And I remember when I first started studying nutrition, and one of the ladies I was interning with, she was very scientific by the book. You eat a handful or a palm full of nuts, you have this amount of this. And so, and yeah, it was very effective for most people. But when I messed up, quote unquote, I would beat myself up. And it was like, in hindsight, like when I noticed I was doing that, I was like, this is causing more harm than good. I could be the healthiest food in the world, but if I'm getting upset at myself every time I make a minor mistake, I might as well not be following this diet at all. And that's where I don't really follow diets in general at all, because I feel like they're too rigid and one size fits all for the most part. But that's another topic. But point being, we need to have forgiveness for ourselves, and we need to allow ourselves to recognize that we will make mistakes, and that's okay. But as long as we forgive ourselves, that's really what it comes down to, because otherwise we're just going to be holding on to this baggage, which is going to show itself in other areas of our life.
So well said. I think the inner emotional component of this health journey is as relevant as anything else. And that's where my heart lies and my passion lies, and doing the self-work, like you said. And like you said, relationships, man, they'll bring it out of you.
Yes, they will.
And those interpersonal relationships really bring you to face the things that, we can kind of brush to the side with our obsession and productivity and being healthy and, helping to change the world. That, each and every aspect of life has the shadow and the light, and neither is meant to be more acknowledged than the other, and neither is meant to be more repressed than the other. And so, like we said, balance, baby, yin and yang, the two forces.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think with that balance topic there, I think that it's important to know that everyone's balance is different. And my balance is different than yours. Your balance is different than your other friends. It's different than Jason's. It's different than Paul Check's. It's different than whoever. It's different than every single person. And yeah, it can be very similar. But each of us have a unique life with unique experiences, unique education, unique feelings, unique emotions that, again, are very similar because we're all human, but are very different based on the experiences we had. And so just remembering that just because you see an article and it says, do this for six-pack abs or whatever the clickbait title is or catchy title is, catchy phrase, maybe that works for that person, maybe. But remember, your lifestyle is going to look a little bit different than that. And finding a balance for someone like me is I want to walk at least 15 minutes a day. Maybe some people they only need 10, they need 30 an hour, whatever it is. My balance is I need about 8 hours of sleep if I go to bed by 10 o'clock. I need more if I go to bed later, which is interesting. We tend to recover better based on current science with our circadian rhythm if we go to bed around 10 o'clock. 10 to 6 is kind of the prime sleeping point for many people would say. And I found that if I go to bed later, I need some more sleep. So my balance is about 8 to 9 hours of sleep, depending on when I go to bed. And yeah, some people can get by 7, some people can get by 8.5, whatever it is. But just recognizing that we have that unique balance, I think is very important. And forgiving ourselves when we fall out of that balance, because there are moments where maybe there is an instance that it's worth it for me to stay up, to continue this conversation with this person past my bedtime, because that conversation in the long term is going to be more beneficial than going to bed instead of saying, you know what, we'll finish this another day. If we're in the middle of a conversation, it's better to finish that conversation. Oftentimes it's not. But again, using our judgment and finding that balance, that it's okay if I go to bed an hour later because I had a very deep, loving conversation that really helped my growth. And that's going to help me in the long term more than that extra hour of sleep. So just to sum this up, everyone has their own balance, and we've got to forgive ourselves.
So well said. Each and every physiology is unique. Each and every body is unique. And the unique way in which we treat ourselves with love is also going to be quite different from the next. And so for that reason, for the forgiveness and for all that you shared on the podcast today, man, I am so blessed to have had you. It's an honor and a pleasure to call you a brother and a friend. I'm so impressed by the way that you market yourself. You share wisdom and knowledge with the world, and the way that you're creating a business that's super authentic to you. Where can people find you online, man?
First of all, thank you, brother. And I'm very much honored to call you a brother and friend as well. And I just want to leave a final note with everyone listening here is that at the end of the day, as I said, whatever your goal is, whatever you're looking to achieve, it's going to take patience, persistence, and consistency. And remembering that if you want to make change and you don't have money, you say, you don't have time, you say, breathe, first of all, go for a walk, get some sleep, drink some quality water, move a little bit, follow the 6 foundation principles. And then when you're ready, when you feel called, you work with a coach like myself or Zavi, and we help you take it to the next step. But there's no reason, no matter what your circumstances, I don't care if you're in a wheelchair, you can do some breathing. Whatever excuses you have, someone has it worse, and you always can do something to better your life. So I just want to leave that message there. And yeah, thank you for having me. The best place people can find me is kind of being everywhere right now, as I got my Instagram, which is at Whole Health Connections, all one word. My Facebook page is Whole Health Connections as well. I'm on LinkedIn at Rob Carney, and YouTube, Whole Health Connections. And then my website is wholehealthconnects.com. And as I said earlier, it's not wholehealthconnections.com because that was $2,500 to buy that domain. So I stuck with wholehealthconnects.com. So I figured that ION doesn't make too much of a difference. So go to wholehealthconnects.com and you'll see more about my coaching, my nutrition programs, and any live events that are coming up. So thank you, Zavi. Thanks for having me, brother.
Total pleasure to have you today, my man. Everyone go check out Rob's podcast. It's fantastic. I've been on it a few times. That's on his YouTube channel. Also, don't snooze on his fantastic ebook, 37 Strategies for Lowering Stress. Super, super wonderful. Available on Amazon, right, for Kindle?
Correct.
Beautiful. And this is one of many more podcasts that I'm sure Rob and I are going to do on the Deep Sea Dive. I hope y'all have enjoyed and brought something of tremendous value out of this, because there's a lot of nuggets of wisdom in here. And, you know, I think we're going to call it at that. Thank you so much, Brother Rob.
Thank you, Zavi. Thank you, everyone, for listening.